Yo, what's going on, Headliner Nation? More breaking news in the NFL world today, as finally it looks like the last big-name player is making his decision. Kenny Golladay headed to the New York Giants, of all places, on a new massive deal here in free agency. I don't know about you. I don't know if I love this signing. Giants fans are obviously 100% excited. I don't want to rain on your parade, but let's talk a little bit about what this means for Golladay and the Giants moving forward. The terms of the deal: Kenny Golladay to the New York Giants. It's 4 years, $72 million, could turn into a max of $76 million, and $40 million of that will be guaranteed. Now, before Kenny Golladay missed basically the entire 2020 season with an injury, a lot of people were expecting a huge breakout from him. In year two, kind of developed into the wide receiver one for the Detroit Lions. In year two there, 119 targets, 70 receptions, 1,063 yards, and 5 touchdowns. In year three, in 2019, there was absolutely no debating it. Kenny Golladay was the wide receiver one for Matthew Stafford. 116 targets, 65 receptions, but brings his receiving yards up to 1,190. And the biggest part of that is scoring 11 touchdowns. He had become one of the better big play wide receivers in all of football. Big play Golladay, as I like to call him around here, was really coming into his own with that nickname. He was a true alpha wide receiver. He was a guy that could beat you down the field with speed. He's a guy that could beat you in the air with any catch. There was no 50-50 balls with Kenny Golladay. If they were near him, you could expect Kenny Golladay to come down with the football. Now he's headed to New York, though, and that's where things can get a little interesting, because I'm not 100% sure that I love this for Kenny Golladay. This is all going to hinge on Daniel Jones. He is going to have to take a step forward as a passer in 2021 to give Kenny Golladay any type of fantasy football relevance. In his rookie year, Daniel Jones, he didn't look too bad in the limited action that we saw him. He threw for over 3,000 yards, and he threw for 24 touchdowns. But those interceptions are an issue for Daniel Jones. Now, we've seen other quarterbacks have interception issues and make fantasy viable wide receivers, right? Jameis Winston, to name one. That's definitely one right there. But Daniel Jones, he might be slinging it a little bit, but he definitely has not developed into, as of yet, the type of quarterback that we need to see. So that's one thing we're gonna have to see from Daniel Jones. We're going to have to see a step forward. We're going to have to see him grow, especially as a deep passer. I mean, Daniel Jones last season wasn't anywhere near the top of deep completions with only 20. In fact, 9.6% of his attempts last season were past the 20-yard line. Do you know people in that area? It's not good. It's not good. Just to name a few, Mitchell Trubisky had 11.1. That's how low it was for him last season. I definitely need to see. Now, his completion percentage, a little bit better down the field, but guess what? It was less than Cam Newton was. His yards down the field, 20-plus yards down the field. He only had 652 yards, 20 yards down the field or more. That was less than Drew Lock. His yards per attempt, at least, was a 15.2. Okay? I got to see more consistency. You know, the good news is he didn't throw an interception at all. But that's because he was like sailing it over heads a little bit too often. So what's going to happen with that growth? What is it going to take for that growth this year to allow Kenny Golladay to become or be what he was in Detroit? Excuse me. Again, it's going to take growth from Daniel Jones. He's an all-around quarterback. But that growth, is it the offensive line getting better? Is it getting Saquon Barkley back? Is it having a wide receiver that is a true threat down the field? I mean, last year, Golden Tate, Darius Slayton, and Sterling Sheperd. I mean, yeah, Darius Slayton's been good. I like Darius Slayton, don't get me wrong. But he's not Kenny Golladay. So now that you've got Kenny Golladay and you've got Darius Slayton on the other side and you've got Sterling Sheperd who can now play in the slot, absolutely love that for him. You still have Evan Ingram. Hopefully you're getting Saquon Barkley back. Daniel Jones has all of the weapons to be successful this year. If it doesn't happen with Daniel Jones this year, it is not going to happen. But part of my concern is, remember the hype of Drew Lock last year? Is that going to be basically the same thing? Are we going to hype up Daniel Jones? Is his draft stock going to get way too high? I don't know. For me, with Kenny Golladay, I'm going to firmly cement him as a high-end wide receiver 2 right now, because I believe this will be an offense that will still spread the ball around a little bit as well. And don't forget, they also brought in Kyle Rudolph at tight end, okay? So I think they're still going to run the football. I think they're going to spread the ball around a little bit. And I think Kenny Golladay is going to have to be happy with anywhere between 80 and 90 targets. And hopefully, if that big play continues to happen with Kenny Golladay, then we can still get him around 1,000 yards. But I also expect those 11 touchdowns not to be replicated either. So I'm expecting more along the lines of potentially 8 touchdowns. So for me, if Daniel Jones grows, he is a wide receiver 2 on the high end. Okay. Now, Daniel Jones, he does have the ability to go down the field. And I'm going to jump into it a little bit more. I think if he's just a little bit more accurate down the field, I think that can really develop. But part of the issue last year that there was no vertical passing game whatsoever. So in the little amount of opportunities that Daniel Jones got, he did a pretty decent job. But if they go down the field more, does it allow for more growth and more consistency? That could be one thing. Some of the inconsistencies that we saw last year could have been because they weren't doing it that often, so he wasn't comfortable with it. Now that he's got maybe a true alpha wide receiver, maybe that helps. They stretch the field a little bit more. It allows more opportunity. Daniel Jones grow. For me, I'm probably going to be a little bit higher on Kenny Golladay than most people. And I think it's going to make Daniel Jones better. I think it's going to make this offense better. And I think the New York Giants are going to be a serious contender now in the NFC East. I'm not writing them off at this point, but we got to dig into the numbers a lot more in depth. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. There's a quick breakdown of Kenny Golladay headed to the New York Giants on a mega deal of more than $70 million. If you're new here to the Fantasy Headliners, hit that subscribe button. Become a part of Headliner Nation today. Hit the like button if you appreciated the content. And most importantly, leave me a comment down below and let me know what you think this does, not only for Kenny Golladay, but for Daniel Jones. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to get out of here. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.